to be a little bit different. Typically, it's me, Suzanne, and Emily from leading veterinary teams talking all things veterinary leadership. Sometimes it's just us, and other times we have guests. But in this episode, the tables are turned, and we're the guests. We were invited by Emily, the owner of Love.HuVet, a really awesome vet tech-led brand, to talk all about navigating difficult conversations. This conversation was so good we went way over the time, and therefore decided to split this episode into 2 parts. If you haven't heard the first part, go back and take a listen. In this second part, we talk all about why it's important to choose the best time and place for difficult conversations, strategies for constructive dialogue, and then steps to take after the conversation. At the end, we share our personal experiences with navigating difficult conversations. So, if you're ready, let's jump right into it.
Now, what are your guys' thoughts on the best time and place to have these conversations, like whether it be good or bad, and how does the setting impact the outcome?
I mentioned before privacy. I think that I don't. So when I was thinking about this question, I immediately say never have difficult conversations by yourself, because you just never know, and it protects you and it protects the other person by having an unbiased third party.
Sure.
And then I think about me as the employee being in that conversation, and I think that it really depends. I think it depends on the relationship you have with your leader and your subordinate, whatever. I think it depends on, as a leader, if you have created an environment where people feel safe and they trust you and you trust them, and we can have candid conversations, then go for it if you feel comfortable. I have been in far too many situations as the employee where I don't trust my employer, that I ask for a third party if that third party is not already present. But I can see it from both ways. In general, for me as a leader, I will always err on the side of having a third party, just from personal experience, both as a leader and not, and always privately. I have unfortunately been on the end of a doctor that I worked with asking me, not really asking me, but saying, did you do this? Very accusatory, in the perpendicular hallway that surgery and treatment were at. And there was a lot, it was a very large specialty hospital, and quite a lot of people heard this interaction, and my immediate reaction was, no, I didn't do anything, because I'm going to deny, because you are putting me on the spot and there's people everywhere. And then I became the liar. And so stop. And so
that's your natural response too.
It was a visceral, I just panicked, right? It was fight or flight. And so after having that experience, I will never do that to somebody. So, and that wasn't even a true crucial conversation. She was just asking me if I was doing something, but it was the tone that she used. And so for me, very much important to make sure that people feel safe and that it's private.
Is this only for even if you're praising someone, still private?
So it depends, right? And sorry, I'm taking over, but it totally depends. If you are somebody who is super, super introverted and you don't like public praise, and I publicly praise you, now we have a problem. Right.
Just hide. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, one of the other things that I've noticed really when I'm having these difficult conversations, and I've found success, is having them actually not on the premises at work, meeting up somewhere like a diner or something like that down the street and having a conversation also really helps kind of bring that whole ease of, is anybody going to listen to us? Is anybody going to interrupt us? And letting that other person know, hey, I want to have this conversation here because I really want to make sure that we have this conversation and that we get to the bottom of things. And I don't want anybody else to like really know what's going on. And nobody knows that like we're even meeting kind of thing. So it kind of also puts like that part aspect into things. I think if you're having something more along the lines of talking about termination or anything along those lines, like Suzanne has said, having a third party there. I've always had a third party there. Anytime I'm having a conversation with somebody, just as a buffer for myself and that other person, kind of, I don't really like to call them the referee, but they're there just in case like the other person kind of also starts to get emotional, and like they're kind of there to, hey, there's some emotions happening here. Maybe now's not the time to have this conversation. And I also try to make sure that that third party is somebody that understands what the conversation is and how to also have these difficult conversations. And it's not somebody that is practicing it or anything along those lines. It's somebody that can pick up on cues and things that are happening when these conversations are happening as well. But I think also just even not being in the hospital or like on the property when you're having these conversations have totally helped with me personally, and getting the outcomes that we were looking for.
Yeah, I'm gonna add two things really quick to that, because one, I absolutely love that you brought that up. I used to work with a medical director, and we used to take walking meetings all the time, and they weren't they weren't even crucial conversations. One time she was like, I'm really upset with you and we need to go for a walk. And I was like, okay. And we did, and we walked and we talked, and there was something about getting the like juices flowing.
Probably.
Yeah, and the fresh air. And by the end, like, I'm not a hugger, but we were hugging and I was here for it. And we were able, it wasn't even a long walk. Nobody even knew we went and took a walk. It was great. And then the other thing to mention about that third party is that third party, I said they need to be unbiased, but what I mean, I just want to clarify what I mean by that. This person can't, if you're your hospital manager and you're talking to your technician, this cannot be a peer. This cannot be another technician. It also really shouldn't be another doctor unless it's a medical director. It should be someone of some sort of leadership. And if you don't have that in your hospital, then an HR representative or somebody that is in like a regional operations role, somebody that's above. If you're the practice owner and there is no one above, well, then you might have to do it by yourself. But you really, it depends, right? Like if you're a really tiny practice and there really is no other leadership and it's just you, then it's just you. But it really should never be a peer, or even less than a peer. Like if you're talking to a doctor about performance, do not bring a technician in there. Like that is not appropriate. If you're talking to a doctor about performance, medical director or chief of staff should be there.
Really?
I just wanted to clarify.
What's that? Like you say peer, but like if it's like a practice built, like, you know, there's assistants, there's technicians, and then there's like lead technicians. They would be considered a leader, right? Or okay.
So that's a leader. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends. There's some practices that have lots of different layers of leadership. I would say whoever that person is reporting to, if they're not the one who is bringing this to the person, then they should be there. And honestly, so example, I report to a technician supervisor, right? As a technician, if my technician supervisor is not the one bringing it up, but my, I don't know, hospital director is bringing it up to me, my technician supervisor should be there. And if I were the hospital director, I would be having that technician supervisor leading that conversation, and I would be the unbiased person for growth opportunity, because they got to learn how to have difficult conversations too. But yeah, when I say peer, I mean like Emily is a licensed technician in the ICU, and I'm a licensed technician in oncology, and we're both in this meeting, and you're meeting with me. That's not appropriate, because then Emily is going to go to the ICU and be like, yo, you know what, Susan?
This has happened. That happens for sure.
Yes, it does. And that is not okay.
No, not at all. Even when they're not in the conversation, you know, that's happening.
Right.
I love the idea of going for a walk or off premises or even just outside.
Yeah.
So much better. I remember like I mean, we were immature, but like someone would get called into the office, you're all like standing outside of it, but like doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Just
Mm-hmm.
waiting to see what. Now, can you guys share some effective strategies or techniques for keeping difficult conversations constructive?
Stay calm.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
That's
Emily.
the biggest. Yeah, that's the biggest one and the hardest one. Also making sure you're staying on your expectations. What you wanted to get out when you set your intent at the beginning of the conversation, making sure you're staying on track. It's really easy, especially like when Suzanne and I are on our meetings, for us to get sidetracked. And then normally one of us has to go, okay, what were we doing again? And like kind of bring it back. When you're having these difficult conversations, it's really easy to get sidetracked. They may talk about something that happened 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, something along those lines. Feelings are going to be brought up, those kind of things. It's okay for that to happen, but remembering what the main point is. Also, if you are disagreeing, do it respectfully. Explain why behind your disagreement or why behind your reasoning. The other person just may not see it that way. That's a whole reason for 99% of these conversations is just because the other person has a hard time putting their feet in the other person's shoes. I joke around because I wear like a kid size 4, so nobody could ever fit their feet in my shoes, which is totally fine. Yeah, perfect. But it's one of those things that it's like being able to put yourself in their shoes and trying to do that in the moment as well. Also, don't try to avoid blaming. It's really easy to point fingers. Like Suzanne said, at Disney World, you'll get fired if you point with one finger. But try not to even point with two in these kinds of conversations. It's really easy to, you did this, this is wrong, these are all the things that you did wrong. Also, what about talking about all the things that you did right? So like, it's one of those kind of like gray areas as well. So you also don't want to kind of put together like a compliment sandwich where you're telling somebody all the things that they did bad, all the good things, and then kind of, well, but then again, these are the things that you also did bad as well. And one of my favorite things to do is asking open-ended questions when you're having these conversations. So instead of just yes and no, or how are you feeling throughout those things, is more of what I like to ask, because I like to get a little bit more deeper into conversation. Instead of, are you okay with this? What if I'm not? It doesn't give me the option to say, well, I'm not okay with this, and this is why. I kind of feel like when you're asking yes and no kind of questions, which is something I did a lot as a child, and I know that my mom is watching this live and she's probably laughing. I did that a lot as a child, did not get me very far. So I started asking more open-ended questions.
Yeah, and
Suzanne, do you want to go ahead?
Questions, I think, are something that people struggle with, and so just for some examples, open-ended means that person, whatever your question is, that person is then going to have to respond with more than just yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I tend to say, tell me about Tuesday. Tell me about what happened on Tuesday. And they will know what happened on Tuesday. They will know what you're talking about. If they don't, they will be like, it was a good day. I don't know. We had lunch brought in, we had extra, whatever, right? But I always say, tell me about, is kind of how I start them. Most of the time, most of my open-ended questions start with tell me something, or share with me. Even when I'm talking to a client, tell me what's going on with Fluffy. Tell me what's going on now. So you don't tell me what happened in 1982, right? I agree completely about, open-ended questions, also listening. So ask that open-ended question and then let them actually answer you. Like ask your question and then shut up. to say it nicely, I guess, because a lot of times we are just waiting for people to finish, and we've already thought about our next question or the next thing we're going to say, and we already know what we're accusing them of. So we're going to make it seem like we're being nice and we want to hear their story. But at the end of the day, like, you did this wrong, you messed up, so we're going to have to talk about it, right? So really listening, because you might be surprised at what you hear. The reason behind things that happened may not be what the story is that you were coming into. So trying to be as open and available to take those things in, I think, is also really important. And then just like the communication skills that we learn with clients, you ask the question, you listen, and then you check for understanding, right? So what I'm hearing is, and then if they're like, no, actually, that's not what I said, then you weren't listening because ADHD, right? And then they can repeat what it is that they're actually, what the issue is or what happened.
It's almost like you're giving that, isn't that considered recall? Like you're recalling what, and so they know you're listening, or hopefully you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's people that know that trick and will be like, oh, she's just doing this psychology thing on me, but it works. It allows me to listen to you, confirm that what I'm hearing is correct, and then we can brainstorm solutions together. We can talk about what's going on, how can we fix this together. I don't want to tell Emily's story, but she always has a no complaining rule, and I mean, I'm gonna let you take from there because it's awesome.
Yeah, so when I was a practice manager, I had a no complaint policy, and I would tell everybody, you can come to me with any concerns that you have, but just come up with one solution. We can vent. You can tell me how stupid this protocol is, all the things that don't work about it, and then tell me all the things that you want to fix about it. And it may not be the way that we do it, but we're going to give it a shot, and we'll recap and go from there. But I always gave my staff the free range of, you're doing this. This is just an idea that we had. This is how we think that we can fix this. If you have a better solution, come to me about it. And it definitely cut back the chit chat on the floor of the whole, well, this doesn't work, because they were able to come straight to me and say, this is stupid, this is why, and then this is my idea on how we should fix it. And I felt a lot better about that when they would come to me with those things. Because it means that they were actually, first off, doing one of the things that we had implemented, and that they were starting to find holes in things. So it was also giving them problem-solving things as well. And when other people would start complaining about like things not working on the floor or anything like that, they'd say, well, did you let Emily know that that's not working? She'll take care of it right away. Like, does she know? And it would be like, no, nobody told her. Oh, no. And then it would be brought to my attention. But once the whole no complaint thing started, somebody would be like, this pump has been giving me the worst time, and would come into my office, complain for 10 minutes about the pump, and then say, I think we should get these, and talk to me about a whole different pump line, all of the other stuff. Clearly it was something that they were super passionate about, and about 6 months later, we had all new pumps in the hospital because of that person. So it was like one of those, like, that person got so frustrated with that day. I was like, okay, no problem. They had a whole presentation basically together for me as to why we should get these pumps. I'm like, I don't even need it. This is your equipment. We need to make sure you can do your job. We're on it. Don't worry about it.
I love that.
So it was
probably
just,
makes them feel like so appreciated too, or even just that they're heard, and it's gonna make them feel so important too.
Yeah, I mean, if they're the ones that are doing it,
and it's safe.
Who am I to tell them how to do it? Like, if you're the ones that are doing it, this is just from my experience what we think would work. Hey, it doesn't work for this hospital. Perfect. You think it's going to work this way? Let's try it.
Yeah, and it'll save you crucial conversations down the line, because people get what they're asking for, and they feel heard, and they feel listened to, and they feel seen, like you said, and they also feel safe to be able to have those conversations with you, so that when there are things that come up, you can easily breach the conversation. Like, hey, what's just makes it easier.
So much easier.
I love that. That's a really good rule. I like the no complaint rule.
And I make her talk about it.
No complaint rule.
So after a tough conversation, what steps do you guys recommend to ensure that it's resolved and the relationships are maintained?
Sorry, I'm changing screens.
Okay. One of the things that you'll want to do after you have that conversation is recap. Recap with that person, kind of just talk about everything that you've just discussed, all of those things. And then I like to send a recap email. So this way it's all written out. We have it documented, everything that we talked about, the steps that we're doing. And then I also like to, before that meeting is over, set time for a future meeting so we can touch base after we've had that conversation, and we're going to make these changes and kind of, touch base again within, like, I try to do not more than 2 to 3 weeks later. It also kind of shows the other person that I'm serious about this. It's something that I feel like in vet med we forget to do, is those follow-ups all the time. Mm-hmm. So making sure that I set that up and that we have that time, allotted to talk in like 2-3 weeks so we can touch back on this. That shows me that my manager cares and that they want to resolve this. So making sure that you have that, and definitely acknowledging what the next steps are going to be. That's one of the biggest parts, is making sure that everybody knows what their role is going to be moving forward from here on out. And be flexible too with your check-in. If something happens where, like, the week of, you're supposed to meet that Thursday, but somebody's kid is sick and now we need to flip-flop schedules and those kind of things, touch base with that person, let them know, hey, if we need to reschedule, you tell me what works best for you. But making sure that you do reschedule that meeting and that it doesn't fall through the cracks. And set a realistic timeline as well. Just because something happens, like Suzanne and I said, it did not take us overnight to become professionals with crucial conversations and emotional intelligence. It takes a lot of time to work on it. So setting a realistic deadline or timeline for implementing this is going to be key. And letting the other person, when you're having this conversation, like, hey, listen, we all know Rome wasn't built in a day. This isn't going to be fixed in a month. Maybe we should kind of say 2-3 months, we should kind of see some progress, those kind of things. And checking in too with like your open lines of communication. Talk with this person. How do they want to be updated? How do you want to be updated? Is it through email? Is it through text messages? Is it through quick little voice chats back and forth? Are they more of like a Zoom person where they want to jump on a Zoom meeting with you and talk? Do they want to meet you in the hospital 10 minutes before their shift starts? Kind of just check in those things. See what's easier for them and for you. As a leader, I always found it was easier to talk to people based on their communication styles. I can email, I can text, I can smoke signals, whatever you want me to do, as long as I know that we're able to keep those open lines of communication and that you're able to get the information that I'm giving to you and you're able to report back to me. I'm okay with however we would need to talk. And making sure that you're reiterating any areas of like your agreement, things that you agreed upon, making sure like you let that person know, like, okay, great, these are the things that we're good with, this is what we're going to stick with, and then these were the things that we're going to change. A lot of times once you have these crucial conversations, people are kind of a little bit more hung up on the good things that came out of it, and then they're like, well, the bad things that happened, but let's sweep those under the rug. It's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to be a little uncomfortable, but making sure you're able to keep those lines of communication open. And it's, I guess the best way to put it is, I always feel that after I've had these conversations with people that my connection with them is a lot stronger. I don't know if they normally feel that way, but a lot of the times they tell me that they do. They feel that they can come to me with any kind of problems or anything along those lines. So it really kind of helps building the trust aspect of things and making sure you don't lose that trust.
That's, yeah, it's very, it sounds like you're like the go-to manager, not gonna lie. Like I would love but something that came to my head with you brought it up multiple times was those follow-ups. I myself am not good with following up, but something my husband does and that I've started doing is and this can be applied for anything. Like I do all my tasks or like work, whatever. Like putting in your calendar. So like, let's say something came up today, like I need to follow up with someone, put it in, let's say you want to follow up in 2 weeks and set it to repeat every day. And your calendar is going to look so insane, but it'll alert you every day. And it's almost like that annoying nagging, like you need to do it, you need to do it, you need to do it. And then that way, when you complete it, you get to delete it and you feel so much better. And then another thing would be like, if you don't like that, is the reminders app, because that stays on your notification center. So option for people, but that made me think of it again when you brought up the follow-up, like maybe after your meetings, just turn that on for yourself if you're forgetful like me, and it'll remind you.
One of the things I was going to say, one of the things that I do is I send the calendar invite before we even finish the meeting. So this way it's like on there, it's like, yep, and the follow-up meeting is like already done before we even like go our separate ways. I'm already sending you an invite and it's on my calendar, and I'm already making sure that that time is allotted for you so we can follow up.
You got it.
So funny. Yeah, it's so funny how a lot of the things that these like tips and tricks that we use to trick ourselves are the same things that we do with our clients, right? Like we want them to come for a follow-up. They will never schedule that follow-up. Just like you will never schedule that follow-up or that one-on-one. You cannot put it in somebody else's hands. You probably can't even put it in my hands at a later date. Like you have to schedule it now or it's never going to happen. And so it is 100% whatever, if it's an app, if it's putting it on your calendar, if you're old school and you still have Emily has a handwritten calendar. If you still have like the old school stuff, you gotta write it on your hand. I don't care what you have to do, but you gotta set it in stone now. And then the other piece to it is if it is a follow-up meeting or a phone call or whatever it is, you actually have to do it. Right? Like, let's not reschedule said follow-up because we're busy. No. We are not too busy for this because our staff is important. Our team is important. And you will hear me, the longer y'all follow me, the longer you will hear me say 110 times that if you take care of your people, they will take care of you. And that goes for everything. Right? And so if you're telling somebody that you are going to follow up with them and you schedule that meeting, do not cancel on them. And honestly, don't let them cancel on you unless there is a true emergency, because it's not okay. Oh, well, so-and-so has to have a surgery and we have to get in that surgery. Well, then we're going to pre-plan that we have someone to cover you so you can come off the floor and we can have this conversation.
It's true. That's a great point too. Like, don't keep putting it off. Like, just get it done too. You know, it's not going to kill you, and it'll make every party feel better about it as well.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're getting past that hour mark. I just want to check to see if there are any questions out there. If anyone has any questions for Emily or Suzanne, I'm going to leave it open for a minute. And if not, we can go into the personal experience.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much for being here. This has been great.
Oh, of course. I get like super passionate, and I talk really fast. New Yorker, can't help it.
I'm with you. What part?
I grew up in Long Island.
Me too. Where? Did we talk about this?
I don't know. I know that maybe. I grew up right near the Ronkonkoma train station, like right
That's so funny.
In my backyard.
Oh my god. I grew up I grew up in Amityville, and then I moved to Huntington in 2004. Oh. And I grew up there. Oh. That's so funny. I don't think we talked about it, but you know who else is from Long Island? Have you heard of Blend Vet?
Yeah.
Dr. Nicole Bruno. She's from Long Island. I think she is from Ronkonkoma, or I remember she was telling me about a train. So that was, I just like,
That's funny.
oh,
She's like best friends with a girl that Emily and I used to work with, Katie Hastings.
What a small
So I met Dr. Bruno at VMX in January.
Wow.
We were like dancing together. I was like, who is this short Spitfire? She's so cute. I mean, I'm short too, but I think she might actually be shorter than me. She's this like tiny human. I love her to pieces. She's so cute.
Oh. That's so awesome.
But I didn't know she was from Long Island. That's funny.
I know all the good people come from there. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
Sorry.
You're close enough.
I'll stay in Jersey.
All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Did you guys still want to share your personal experiences? I asked them to, if you guys have any personal experience where you successfully navigated a challenging conversation in the field.
Yeah. So I will tell
Go for it.
I will tell you about my story of Dr. Lisa. I changed her name, so I'm gonna sort of read it because I will get really distracted by the name being changed, but I want to, like, for privacy purposes. So Dr. Lisa's performance was affecting her overall efficiency, as well as staff morale. She was really negative. She never got up from her chair, and she would complain about everyone and everything. This was before I learned about the no complaining rule. I knew I was a new manager. I knew that I had to address her. I told you guys earlier that as a technician, now manager, having to address a doctor really made me nervous. So for me, it was a very uncomfortable, hard conversation. I asked to speak with her and the medical director in a private office to discuss the concerns that I was having with her performance and the way that she was acting at work. I started the conversation. She had been a doctor there for a long time before I was ever there. So I did express appreciation for her years of dedication. I really wanted to set a positive tone for the conversation. But I shared that in recent times, there had been a decline of her performance. Her attitude was, negatively affecting the staff, and the clients were also complaining that she seemed really not caring about their pets. And I gave her specific, I think this was the key to this conversation, is that I gave her specific examples without pointing fingers at her. I shared what I knew, and gave her the opportunity to, understand what I was hearing, and also give her the opportunity to rebuke that, right? Tell me if, like, that's not true or whatever. I asked open-ended questions. Yes, you'll be a star student in 2 days. I asked open-ended questions. I inquired if she was facing any difficulties at home or challenges. I really expressed genuine concern for her because it was really out of the norm for her to be acting like that. And I didn't know if it was something that was going on in the clinic or if it was something going on outside that she was bringing in. And because of that conversation and the relationship that we had built over time of just having trust in general, she was able to open up with me about some personal challenges. I made sure to listen. Again, I said it before, I listened without just assuming that she was, lazy and sitting in the chair all day and complaining. And I really, really focused on listening to what was going on. I offered support. I offered empathy. And then we collaborated on solutions. We were ultimately able to establish an adjustment to her work schedule that allowed her to be home more and handle the things that were going on at home. We established clear expectations and outlined a plan for improvement so that she wasn't bringing in whatever negative things were going on the outside in. And this included a commitment that she was no longer going to gossip. She was no longer going to speak negatively in the hospital. Remember, this was a doctor, and doctors, whether you like it or not, are leaders in the hospital. Your assistants, your technicians, they're all looking up to you. Mm-hmm. And so it's really, really important that she wasn't speaking negatively about other people, about clients, all of that. And so she committed to that. we followed up. We made sure to keep talking about it, kept having her come in. I believe it was at first it was every week, and then we started to stretch it out. And honestly, the improvement in the hospital atmosphere, it was like night and day. The moment she started to because her schedule changed and she was able to take care of the things at home, she started to feel better. She was able to come in. Eventually, she thanked me for caring about her enough to make those changes for her. I think that while that is a great story and it was wonderful to have that opportunity, I gotta say that, to be honest and realistic, that's not always how they end. And I have had to fire doctors before, and it's uncomfortable because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to fire people. It's uncomfortable to have to fire a doctor. I say that and people's eyebrows go, how did you do that? How did you fire a doctor? Doctors are so hard to come by. But I truly, like, I'm mama bear to my team, and I need to take care of them. And you, negative Nancy, I don't care what your role is. You can't be here if you're going to be that way. And so Dr. Lisa was able to be coached and was able to be kept. And I unfortunately have had not so positive experiences where I've tried to coach and they just weren't receptive, and we did have to coach them out. So I just want to point out that, like, it does happen, and that is part of our job as leaders, that we have to do what's right for the overall team.
It sucks to be in that position. It's when it's the negative ones, but yeah. I'm sure those positive outcomes really, I hope they outweigh the negative ones, because I mean, she had to feel so good to be seen and for you guys to take the time to help her through that.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you have a story for us?
Yeah, so mine actually is before I even knew how to handle these difficult conversations. It was one that I had with a doctor while I was working on the floor. A couple months before that, my own cat had passed away under alfaxalone, and I, ever since then, was super scared to use the medication. And this doctor was getting ready to just do a quick UO, and she wanted to use Alfax, and I wasn't comfortable. I expressed to her that I wasn't comfortable and that I was going to go and grab another nurse to swap out. And on the floor in front of clients and nurses, she basically called me a whole bunch of names, told me I was a baby and that I should just suck it up and get over it. And I didn't have that conversation with her right then and there. I just kind of swapped out and did what I had to do. And I grabbed the supervisor that was on staff and said, I need to sit down with you and this doctor right now and have a conversation. We went into a room, and I basically told the doctor, I did not appreciate how you treated me, the way that you said those things. I stated all of my facts, and then I told her my side of the story. And she broke down in tears. She didn't realize what I was personally going through when all of this happened as well. The fact that I was going through a divorce and moving back to New Jersey and things along those lines, and then my cat dying and stuff like that. So for me, it was kind of a little bit of a triggering thing. And since then, this doctor has now taken the time to kind of talk to people and get to know them more. She was very abrasive and just kind of like go, fast paced kind of thing. But now she actually like talks to people, and she thanked me for that day, for sitting her down and making her realize, like, not everything is just because I don't want to do it. There's a reason behind those things. So that's, I basically told her, I was like, at the beginning of the conversation is, I love working with you. We get through cases so fast and we have such a great relationship, but I just don't understand what made you say those things. And when she, was just like, I don't understand. You're such a great nurse. You do all these things. You can run anesthesia with your eyes closed. Why can't you just do this? And when I explained to her the story more in detail, everybody in the clinic knew that I did not like working with the drug, and they were absolutely fine with it. It's kind of when it flipped her mind a little bit, and she was like, oof, okay, so people don't have it so easy. And ever since then, we had a great working relationship. She's actually had a lot of other nurses and assistants who don't mind working with her anymore because she's not so abrasive. So actually like ask them like how their day is going. and stuff like that, instead of like moving on to the next thing. And nobody ever took it personal. She's really good at what she does. But it was just, that was the one for me that kind of stuck out, because then once I started going through this whole Crucial Conversations course and getting certified to like teach the course, I was like, wow, I was doing this without realizing I was doing this. And this is something that I'm pretty good at, actually. So that's like the story that I normally tell people when they're like, tell me about a time that you had to have a difficult conversation. I was like, well, this was before I even knew that I was about to have a difficult conversation.
It reminds me of Suzanne's story with McDonald's.
Yeah.
You know, she had no idea how like her actions affected people.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't realize what, like, people have lives outside or things going on outside of work.
Yep.
Yeah, right? Like, who knows what that poor girl at McDonald's was going through, and then I had to and scream at her, right? Like, and we experience that daily with clients,
Yeah.
right? We have clients come in and they're yelling at us. Like, I had a client yesterday thank me for everything I do, and I was like, wow, that feels good, right?
This
like,
is nice.
That's not something I'm used to. And I thanked her for thanking me. I was like, well, thank you for being so kind. You know, and it's those little things that we don't realize. And it also, both stories, my McDonald's story and Emily, your story, it's all about perception, right? I didn't know how I was perceived. I didn't realize, like, I knew that I was a little bit off the handle, but I didn't realize it was perceived that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that same thing, right? Like, she probably didn't even think that she came off that way, because it's just what she was used to, and she didn't even, you don't hear yourself.
Stopped her before.
Yeah.
No. And that was the other part, is nobody's ever had that conversation with her before. So how is she going to know what's going on unless somebody like tells you what's going on? And ever since then, she's been more aware of her surroundings and conversations that she's had, and we're like best friends.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing those stories and for being here tonight. This has been awesome, and it's so great to talk to you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting us. And so we are on Instagram at Leading Veterinary Teams. We have a website that I just fixed today, so go check it out, lvt.vet. It's beautiful, and I'm obsessed with it. If somebody goes to it and finds something that doesn't work, please let me know, because I spent a lot on it. But yeah, I'm just gonna plug our biz for a second, if that's okay. We provide mentorship and coaching, but we also have leadership training. We have a masterclass this Friday, which also happens to be my birthday, so you all should just come to like celebrate. But it's this Friday, talking about being the veterinary leader that people don't want to leave. So hopefully that is something that is intriguing to people that are watching, and you can get all the information on our Instagram page, like I said, Leading Veterinary Teams. Yeah, and honestly, beyond just the one-on-one coaching and the mentorship and courses for people that want to be leaders or want to grow their leadership team, their leadership skills, we are starting to work with larger groups as well. So corporations, conglomerate type things, for people that if you don't have the learning and development team, right? Like, I'm not talking the big VCAs and things like that already have all of that established. I'm talking like the startups and the smaller companies that don't have a training for their leadership. We are here to help you either create it for you or talk you through what you need for those leadership trainings. So lots of things on the horizon.
Yes, guys, definitely give them a follow and check out their website, or even contact them if you have any questions.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much. This has been awesome. Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
guys.
Have a good night.
You too.
Well, there you have it. Navigating difficult conversations. Again, if you skipped part 1, go back and take a listen. Then head over to love.huvet on Instagram and give Emily and her team a follow. Next week, we'll be talking about confidence, and you're not going to want to miss this one.